Yo, what's going on gamers? It's Ryan 6 days a week, and in this video, I'm going to show you how I quickly get started with the fighter class as we review the first 3 games I play on a new character and go from no loot to legendary gear. Well, actually we get a unique artifact in this video, but we'll talk more on that later. Now, if you're just getting started with this game, don't expect to match the pacing quite yet. I just want you to focus on the general tips and fundamental knowledge showcased in this video. Now, let's get started with our fighters, perks, and skills. For our very first game, you should begin with the Sword Mastery perk. Your goal is to clear rooms fast and efficiently. Sword Mastery will help greatly with that. You technically can get more DPS with Slayer, but of course in your very first game, you do not begin with a secondary weapon to activate the perk. As for skills, Second Wind and Sprint are essential. Second Wind will give you a massive advantage during prolonged fights, and Sprint is the best movement ability in the game. Alright, let's take a look at match number 1. Our main objective, as soon as we enter, is to look for upgrades, and the best place to look are inside crates and barrels. As on top of utility items and treasures, a big part of their loot table are smaller gear pieces like helmets, gloves, and boots, which, as a fighter, we don't start out with any of those, and they're basically only positives. As I break these destroyables, I'm prioritizing items with move speed, physical damage, health, and attack speed in that order. Now, I'm going to take time to clear this entire room before moving to the next, as I'm starving for experience points and I want to have a navigatable area in the event that another player shows up. In terms of items that I cannot use, I'm only going to look for gear that is grade epic or purple and up. If it's blue or below, I try not to grab it just to keep things organized, and I do expect to fill up my inventory of loot regardless. If you're truly a new player, like you haven't even touched the game, don't even worry about what kind of loot you should be looking for. Your very first steps are to just learn how to properly fight enemy monsters. I won't dive too deep into that in this video since I already have numerous videos out that cover this topic, but you need to get yourself to a point that you're essentially taking 0 damage from any kind of basic mob. This will allow you to clear rooms faster and give you a massive advantage in any PvP encounter. Seriously, knowing how to fight basic PvE in this game is the first major milestone in terms of overall skill, and what you should be focusing all of your effort into. Now, with some gear and utility items, we can start exploring some of the map's points of interest. Lucky for us, to our immediate south is a giant centipede and rare chest spawn, so we can start heading there. These sub-bosses are found all over the Goblin Caves, and their spawn points can be found using the wiki's interactive map, linked in the description. On our way there, I pick up both a rare short sword, and a little bit after that, an uncommon arming sword. These weapons become important, as they will shape our fighter build for the next round. For the sake of time, I'm going to skip through the centipede fight, but if you'd like to learn how to do this, it is in my block and dodge all overground mini bosses guide. We actually do get a pretty good ring of finesse from the centipede, so I'm satisfied with starting to find an exit. Thankfully, in the top right corner of our minimap, there is a static escape staircase. Having it that close to where we are currently means I could take my time to clear out the rest of this room, a little bit of the next room, and make it out. I want to maximize as much experience as I can from these last couple minutes of the match. I'm hoping to get to level 5, at least, after this first round. That chest there that you see on screen is the rare chest spawn I was talking about earlier. It can either spawn as an unlocked lion's head chest, a locked lion's head chest, or a golden chest, which is always locked. In this case, this lion's head chest is locked, so having no lockpicks or skills to unlock locked chests, we have to move on. Thankfully though, on our way out, there's a second lion's head chest spawn. In this case, it is unlocked. The sound you just heard there is the gate to the static exit opening up. We've made it out. Now that we're out, we can see who remains. In this case, there are only 2 players. Since we were just Neophyte 3, the lowest rank, as we created a new character, the majority of players in these lobbies will die to PvE, so it's quite difficult to find other players quickly. Back at the tavern, I'm going to store any piece of armor I could wear in the future and sell my treasures. I always like bringing out extra boots if I have the space, since we don't have access to the trading post quite yet, and movement speed is only a positive. We are now level 5, which means I can pick up my next perk as well. And I'm gonna go with Slayer, which gives me plus 5 weapon damage with the trade-off of no longer being able to wear plate armor. Even if we did not have a secondary weapon, I still would choose Slayer and just purchase a short sword or Castellan dagger from the weaponsmith to activate the perk, since, well, Slayer is simply that strong this early in the game when we're still missing 2 perk slots. I also used some gold to pick up a crossbow, which is the fighter's only native ranged weapon, some bolts, and some healing items. Again, with no trading access at our current level, there's really no reason to save gold, so we might as well invest all of it to speed up our leveling process. You may have noticed that we also swapped out Second Wind for Adrenaline Rush, since we've access to healing items now, and I'm confident that we can end most fights quickly, making Adrenaline Rush a bit more valuable. It does give plus 15% action speed, which is not only attack speed, but reloading and swapping weapons, so overall, a pretty good skill. Now, hopping into match number 2, we can see that our arming sword combo is now hitting in the mid 60s and 70s for headshots. When first starting out in the base kit, you'll only be hitting 37 damage to the head, so we essentially doubled our damage, which speeds up our clear time and overall loot. For this match, our main goal is going to be clearing routes to rare loot points of interest, as we're no longer in need of small gear pieces like gloves and boots. I'm still going to loot medium and large chests along the way to the centipede and rare chest spawns, as we're missing a chest piece, which really only spawns in those 2 sources. But for the most part, I'm just seeking higher end gear now. We end up navigating back to this northern giant centipede, as I already know there are some good lion's head chest spawns around here, and I could always use the jewelry upgrade. At this point, I do need to stay as aware as possible, since we've crossed through multiple modules with very little evidence of player activity, so our time is due for running into someone else. We get a decent ring upgrade, and soon shortly after in the chests above, we upgrade our weapon to the falchion, which has more range and damage compared to our arming sword, at the cost of attack and movement speed. Now, with a third of the time left in the match, we can start clearing a route to the static exit, as before, but we run into a slight problem. It looks like another player had the same idea. Now, I think this is the perfect fight to showcase the importance of investing gold into a crossbow early game, as we're matched up against a sword and shield plate fighter that has no ranged options. Of course, in a completely melee trade, they would win, due to their higher physical damage resistance and ability to block. But we're going to use this door to deny them the chance, as we poke them with some range damage before entering melee range. Now, if you do end up seeing an enemy in plate, you always have the option to run. Seriously, there's still a lot of time left in the match to find another exit. In this case, since this other player lacks both mobility and ranged, we can contest. That fight was a lot closer than I expected. Now, since I'm low health, I do want to get back to full HP before I spend time to loot. I also want to make sure that my crossbow is reloaded, basically resetting my kit entirely for a potential next fight or third party. If you want to be additionally safe while you're looting, it's a good idea to turn off lights around you and unequip potions on your belt as they glow in the dark. This is something I always try to do, at least for the fighter class, where I don't have any glowing auras. On classes like Bard or Cleric, it may not be as effective. Now, with no lockpicks, we were unable to loot the golden chest that spawned in, so we bank our win and escape. We are now at a point in gear and gold where we can comfortably take down one of the game's main solo bosses and be able to fight off anyone else contesting it. The 2 Goblin Caves bosses can of course be done in completely base gear, but you always run the risk of someone else killing you after. So, unless it is purely for practice, always at least have an upgraded weapon if you intend to farm the Cyclops or Cave Troll, so at least you have a chance to defend your reward after. I don't expect you to be able to do this on your 3rd game as I am showing, but I just want to show you how fast you can progress once you get the basics down, and I do consider learning the bosses as a basic skill in the game. Seriously, it will launch you in progression, and honestly, it's not that hard to do. This is assuming you're comfortable with both basic PvE and PvP. You should be able to navigate to this boss without taking any damage, as well as be comfortable fighting any players along the way. I'm going to skip through most of this fight for the sake of time, as I already have another video on how to fight the Cyclops boss, as well as the other Goblin Caves boss, the Cave Troll, on my channel. After killing the Cyclops, we immediately go to the treasure room and check the cursed doors. These doors only open up if both bosses are killed, and it looks like someone else on the map met that condition for us. However, they didn't bother checking their room's cursed doors, leaving the legendary loot and additional loot pile for us. In our case, we do end up picking up Death Bloom, which is one of the game's artifacts, and an extremely rare drop that most of the player base has never even seen. I typically would immediately look for a static escape in this event, but greed gets the best of me, and I decide to loot the treasure pile on the way out. Now, full of loot, I finally decide to look for an exit. In this case, there's one just to our south that I can make my way to. Now, we do run into another player at the exit, but I have to put my pride aside and not risk losing the unique weapon or legendary gear pieces by fighting in the swarm. So, we escape and bank our win. That wraps up game number 3. With the current price of items, we progress from 0 to roughly 40,000 gold in 30 minutes. But this is not something you should shoot for. I've been playing Dark and Darker for some time now, and this is very much a very lucky series of events. What you should focus on, for this video at least, is building that fundamental knowledge and progressing through more difficult challenges as you improve your skills. There are very distinct milestones that you should focus your efforts into right now. First, learn to fight the basic enemies. I have a ton of guide videos if you're struggling, but for majority of the AI, all you need to do is kite to bait out an attack, and then return an attack after. So essentially you run up to the mob, immediately back off, let the mob swing, and then swing back at it. There's a rhythm to this dance, and it's just something that you will perfect the more you do it. Don't even worry about extracting yet, just focus on getting yourself to a point that you're essentially taking 0 damage from any basic mob. Next, learn what stats are important to your character, and how to extract. In this video, we specifically focused on movement speed, attack damage, health, and attack speed, in that order, as we built up an early game Slayer fighter. The perk progression continued for this character would look something like this, and for skills, I would always stick with Sprint paired with either Second Wind or Adrenaline Rush. I'll have some more videos in the future that go into detail on the Slayer fighter build, and the other main fighter builds such as Sword and Shield fighter and Longsword fighter, that require different gear and perks. For extracting, just do as I did. Find a static escape on the map and clear a route to it when the clock starts to near the ending half of the match. There's no shame in avoiding PvP and extracting early, especially when first starting out. Your static escapes will always be indicated by a blue symbol on the minimap, and for the Goblin Caves and runes, you'll also have random escape portals that appear as the Dark Swarm encloses and the match timer goes down. Next, learn where and how to fight sub-bosses and other sources of higher end loot. This is also where you need to begin pushing yourself into PvP engagements and understanding which class matchups work in your favor and which ones put you at a disadvantage. This game really doesn't have that high of a mechanical skill ceiling, so fights are more won by preparation, decision making, and positioning above all. At this point, I'm assuming you have a comfortable stream of gold and can afford to bring in at least a crossbow and bolts into each of your raids. Having this ranged option will give you a more flexibility in fights and overall a massive advantage. Honestly, ranged is very strong in this game. In terms of improving your PvP skills, my recommendation right now is to record your fights and look over what you could have improved on. There's always so much you could learn by watching over your wins and your losses. If you want to talk more about PvP strategies or look at some fight examples, I just opened up a class-specific forum in my Discord where you can post your PvP clips and look at others. Alright gamers, I hope this video can help those fighters who are just getting started in the game or returning after some time. Don't be discouraged as well if things aren't going too smoothly for the first dozen runs or so. The skill gap between a new player and the average player is wider than it has ever been at this point in the game's life cycle. If you really find yourself struggling, please reach out in the Discord linked to this video, and people will help. This game is one of the most challenging games I have ever played, but also my absolute favorite game. I hope you can find the same brutal joy that I found in Dark and Darker. Thank you as always for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.